Okay, so I'm going to warn you, over the next 4 clips of this particular module, we're going to be adding a lot of view code. So as we go through these, go ahead and make sure you pause and get your views up to date as we go through each of these views. So the first view we'll start with is the index view. And if you remember, we added our views underneath our book list module in the view folder and book list folder, book folder. So we'll go ahead and open up the index page. And if you remember, we also kind of stubbed in some text there so that when we tested the application out, we could kind of see where we were when we hit the different pieces of our route. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And the first thing I'm going to do with all good view files is I'm just going to add our PHP open and close tags. All of our view content is going to go inside of there. The other thing that you'll want to keep in mind is that you'll notice when we add our view code, we're not doing anything with the header or the footer. We're going to talk more about that in Module 5 of this course, but for now we're going to focus only on the content section of our view, which is the area in between our header and our footer. So the first thing I'm going to do is give my page a title. And I can do this in my first little PHP code block by specifying the title of my page. And so I'm just going to call this my books, and this head title is part of Zend that will actually go ahead and set the title up in the header section of your HTML file. Next, I'm just going to give the page a heading, and I could reuse the title above. I could echo that out, but I'm just going to call this my book list and close off the H1 tag. The Zend skeleton application does ship with Bootstrap enabled, so we're going to utilize some of those classes here. And so I'm going to create a table, and in our table we're just going to have our book list. So I'm going to start a table, and I'm going to give it a class of table, which Bootstrap knows about. And I'm going to finish off that tag. The next thing I'm going to do is give it a row that's going to hold our table headers. So I'm going to give my table 3 headers. We'll first list the title of the book. Then the author. And I'm going to leave an empty table header at the end for a column that will hold stuff like the edit button and the delete button. So the next thing we need to add is a loop that's going to loop through all of the books that our controller will return. We haven't added that to the controller yet. We'll get to that in a minute. But for now, we'll go ahead and do it for each. And we want to pass in our books as book. So that'll go ahead and loop through all of our books and store each one in the book as we go through the loop. Next, I'm going to go ahead and end the for each. Inside of here, we just want to print out the contents of our book. Okay, so I'm going to print out the title of the book, and I'm also escaping the HTML just as a guard. And I'm going to do the same thing for the author. Then the last TD, I'm going to set up some buttons for our other CRUD sections. So this is going to be a link to edit and a link to delete. So I cut and paste that in there to save some time. So that's just a basic ahref that links to our action edit and our action delete. I did notice that I missed my TR here. We want to put a table row out for each row. Otherwise, the table will look a little funny. We end our loop and we end our table. Okay, so that is pretty much the basic part of our book index list. The other thing I'm going to add at the very top is a link to the add, because we have a link to our edit and delete for each book, but we don't have a way to add books yet. So underneath my header, I'm just going to add another link that points to our add action. So that comprises our view part, but now we need to go back to the controller and add in the logic to populate our books. So we're going to kind of stub that in because we don't have our model yet, but we're going to add enough in there that we can at least get our view to work. So if you remember, the controller is back over here in the controller section of the module. Okay, to finish off our index action, we need to add two things in here. The first is we need to import the view model Zend class. And that just handles the model view that we'll be dealing with as we move back and forth between the view and the controller. The next thing that we need to add is an empty array that returns books, which will ultimately populate once we get the database table in place, which we'll do in the next module. So in our index action, we're returning a new view model, which holds a bunch of books. In this case, no books. We have an empty array here because we don't have data yet. And we're going to return that over to our index view. And let's go ahead and test this out real quick. So since we worked on the index view, what we want to do is just go to the book index, which is our default route. And if you get a my book list with some empty title and authors, then chances are we have got this populated correctly. So let's go ahead and move on to the next view, and we'll ultimately come back and tie in data in the next course module.